Good afternoon. Please welcome to the stage Reverend LaRon Thompson of Passio Baptist Church in Kansas City and Reverend Stephen Green of St. Luke's AME in Harlem, New York City, and co-founder of Faith for Black Lives.
How y'all doing today? Welcome to Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County. We're so pleased that you are here. And today we are gathered here to stand for justice. We are gathered here to stand for truth. Here is now, and now is here. The place where accountability must start here in Wyandotte County, right here at the doorsteps of City Hall in Wyandotte County. John 8:32 says, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." And today we're here for freedom. We're here to know the truth about what really happened those years ago with Roger Golubski and all of his partners in crime.
Come on, Kansas City, make some noise. No justice. No justice. No justice. All right, Kansas City, we have come all the way from New York City and all across the country and all throughout the world who are watching online so that we can tell the world about the corruption that has been taking place in Kansas City for far too long. In Kansas City, Kansas, for far too long. We know that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And we realize that all the way from Harlem to Kansas City, Kansas, black people have been living under the threat of apartheid and oppression for far too long. And we know it's not just one election that will change it, but it will be the people who will rise up to tear down the walls of authoritarianism and bad policing. So we've come to demand that the Department of Justice would open a pattern and practice investigation. That's the first step, so that we can begin to bring some closure and some healing. But that's not enough. We also have come to reform and to create new forms of public safety. And there also needs to be some reparations for those who have been harmed by the system here in Kansas City, Kansas. But, amen. So we've come to bless this day. Although it may be chilly and cold here on the outside, we know that our spirits are fired up on the inside. We've been waiting far too long. People have been suffering for far too long. And we've come to raise our voices and to sound the alarm. So if you would just pause for a moment of silence as we remember those who've been impacted, those who've been silenced, those who've been held behind bars, those who've been victimized by systems of bad policing. We speak their names. We remember their sacrifices. And we believe that it's because of their blood that is crying out from the ground that justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Ashe and amen.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Now it's my honor to welcome onto the stage a beautiful singer and a treasured member of our community here in Kansas City, a member of the Midwest Innocence Project, Miss LaQuanda Faye Jacobs.
I was born by the river in a little tent, and just like a river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm not afraid to die. 'cause I know what's up there beyond those skies. It's been a long, 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 a long time coming, but I know a change will come. Oh, yes, it will. I go to the movies and I go downtown. They say, "Faker, why you hang around?" It's been a long time coming, but I know a change will come. Oh, yes, it will. Then I go to my sisters. I said, "Sisters, help me please." But she winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there were times that I thought I could last for long, but now y'all, we're able to carry on. It's been a long, 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 a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. A change is about to come, y'all.
And now, please welcome Trisha Rojo Bushnell of the Midwest Innocence Project and Linda Sarsauer, co-founder of Until Freedom.
What up, Kansas City, Kansas? How you doing today? I'm gonna try to lighten up my New York accent just a little bit. I am deeply honored and humbled to be here today. Again, my name is Linda Sarsauer, and I'm one of the co-founders of Until Freedom, and you will meet many of my partners here today on the stage. We just want to be clear about why we're here. We are not from Kansas City, Kansas. We are from New York City. But wherever there is injustice against black people in America, you better believe that we are going to be outside. And especially if that injustice is happening to black women. Black women matter to us. And we know that if we don't fight hard, if we don't come outside, if we don't gather in the ways that we are gathering here today, more corrupt police officers will continue to do their jobs and get paid by our taxpayer dollars. And so we're here to say to the Kansas City Police Department, this is just the beginning. We just bought a few friends this time. But next time, if you don't get your act together and don't hold these cops accountable, we are going to bring other folks from across this country here. We will make hell and raise hell in Kansas City, Kansas, with some of the warriors that have been on this ground. We need the folks here to know that these women who have went through this trauma, their children, their communities, that police officers' job is to protect and serve and not to terrorize our communities. So listen very careful to us, Kansas City, Kansas Police Department, and all those in power that have allowed for this to happen for way too long. So that's what I do for a living, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm a professional troublemaker, and I will raise hell, and I'm not afraid of cops. I'm not afraid of mayors, presidents. I don't care who you are. If you are in a place of power and you are abusing your power, you're gonna find our power, and that is people power. We can't do this work as national leaders without the incredible leadership of local folks in Kansas City, Kansas that have been outside, that have been doing this work, that have been building power, and those directly impacted women that have been telling their stories courageously. So I want to introduce you to my sister Trisha, who's going to let you know a little about more details about where we're at right now and what's going on here in Kansas City, Kansas.
Thank you all, and thank you all for being here today to support the community, and particularly the black women of Kansas City, Kansas, who have made justice and the promise of justice possible. To understand a little bit about when we talk about the misconduct of the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department, we got to go back 5 years. So we got to go back to 2017, when for the first time, the system had to acknowledge the abuse that it had put on the black women and black men in this county through the exoneration of Lamont McIntyre. So in 2017, Lamont was exonerated of a double homicide he didn't commit. Instead, a then detective, Roger Golubski, framed Lamont, who was just 17 years old, when Roger Golubski was called to cover up this murder. Why did that happen? Because Detective Golubski had been sexually abusing black women for over 30 years. And one of those women was Lamont's mother, Rosie McIntyre. And when it happened, she reported him. He continued to terrorize her, and she had to move and change her phone number to get away from him.
Shame.
Fast forward, when he gets called to cover this murder, he makes a photo array of 5 people. 3 of those people are relatives of Rosie McIntyre. One of them is another individual that had reported him to Internal Affairs. He didn't care who he got, and who he got was Lamont McIntyre. 23 years later, the brave women of Wyandotte County came forward to talk about their experiences and to explain it to the court and anyone who would listen about why Lamont McIntyre should be free. And that was the first step for justice, but it was just the first step, because what we know is that abuses like Roger Golubski's do not happen alone. It is an entire system that has empowered and enabled him. When Roger Golubski was abusing Rosie McIntyre, it was at the police station, and another officer walked inside, saw what was happening, closed the door, and left. When witnesses to the crime, family members of the victims, went to the prosecutor, a woman named Tara Moorhead, and said, "We saw what happened. That's not the person who did it." She sent one of them home and threatened the other and said, "You're going to get up there and say what I tell you to say, or I'm going to take away your children." That is not justice. And what we know is justice demands accountability. Tara Moorhead went on to become a U.S. attorney and is still a U.S. attorney to this day.
Shame!
Detective Roger Golubski went on to retire and draw his pension. His partner for several of those years went on to become the chief of police, Terry Ziegler. And what we are here today is to say to the women of Wyandotte County, the black women who have come forward and told their stories, we see you. We hear you, we believe you, and we support you, and we will not stop demanding justice for you and for the whole county until that system is torn down and our vision of justice is enacted.
That's right. No peace! No peace!
And next, I'm very honored to introduce Ophelia Williams, who is a lifelong Wyandotte County resident and a current justice advocate. Today, Ophelia bravely uses her voice to share her experience as a survivor of sexual assault from Detective Roger Golubski, and she's here to demand justice for all of Wyandotte County.
Hello,
Just speak a little closer to the mic.
I'm Ophelia Williams, and I just want to say I'm a victim of Roger Golubski, rape victim. And at the same time, he arrested 3 of my young boys at 13 and the twins at 14. He let the 13 come back home, and he talked to the twins and convinced them that one of y'all did this murder, and if one say he did, then he would get less time. And went to the next one But make a long story short, they both been in jail since they've been 14. They didn't have a lawyer, and I wasn't there. So they signed their life away to 50 and 100 years. So they are 38 years old now. And you know what I've been having bad dreams about, or maybe good dreams. Back in 2017, I had a massive heart attack. Laying there, I died. But the Lord brought me back for this day to be here to tell my story. Thank you.
Lord have mercy. Folks, please give it up one more time for Ophelia Williams. It takes a lot for directly impacted folks to come on stages like this and share these dramatic and traumatic experiences. And so we want Miss Ophelia to know that we got your back and that we need you here because we want you to watch justice happen because you deserve nothing less than justice. In order to do this work, we need all people. People of different faith backgrounds, people of no faith. We need people who have compassion and empathy. But we do know that those who lead in religious institutions have an obligation to be outside. Because whether you are Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, whatever faith you follow, I know that justice is at its core, love is at its core, and compassion is at its core. So I want to introduce to you a dear friend here in Kansas, Reverend Dr. Bobby L. Love Sr. Reverend Love is the pastor of the Second Baptist Church of Olathe, where he has served for 31 years. He's a native of Liberal, Kansas. He presently serves in the cabinet in the Missionary Baptist Convention of Kansas as the General Secretary and Chief of Staff. Give it up for Reverend Love.
What's up, Kansas City? As she said, my name is Bobby Love. I am the senior pastor of the Second Baptist Church there in Olathe. And among other things, I'm also part of More Squared, organization that's been in this fight with everyone, and also the new organizer for the Kansas Faith and Democracy Table across the state of Kansas. And brothers and sisters, as we stand here today, I come to stand to say that this day, for such a time as this, for over 30-some odd years, this place in this county has been affected by a defiant Goliath spirit. And that spirit has been running rampant, running unchecked, running here in this county, wreaking havoc in our community. But I'm here today with you, standing in solidarity with a David type of a spirit to let all of us know that giants do fall. My scripture tells me in 1 Samuel chapter 17, and if I got any Bible scholars here, you know the story all too well, that there was a giant wreaking havoc in the land. But there was a young brother by the name of David, and David's spirit is with us here today, standing in solidarity with those to let them know that giants do fall. So David was confronted with a giant by the name of Goliath, who came out with a spear, who came out with a sword, and who came out with a shield. And what that indicates to us that these victims was confronted with weapons. These victims was confronted with intimidations, the giant of intimidation, the giants of authority that hid behind the blue shield. But we're standing today in solidarity under the spirit of David to say that we're speaking truth to power, that giants do fall. These individuals stood up with faith, they stood up with the power of prayer, and they stood up with courage to let us know today that together we can say it, that giants do fall. Say it with me, giants do fall. One more time, giants do fall. God bless you and God keep you, and let us keep the fight.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Love. When we want to talk about giants falling, we can talk about some of the first steps we know that have actually happened. Starting in September and again this Monday, Roger Golubski was indicted with federal charges and connections to the sexual assault that he has committed. And we know that those giants falling comes with the first step. And as we talked about, I'm very honored to introduce our next speaker, who was part of that first step. My dear friend, Lamont McIntyre, is an exoneree, advocate, and businessman, and he is here to speak with you today after serving 23 years, wrongfully convicted for a double homicide he did not commit.
Man. Yep. Man. I want to let this be known right now. I'm only here on the behalf of everybody who said they was wrong by this person and by this system and they was ignored. I'm here on the behalf of all y'all. I believed y'all. Didn't nobody believe me? 5 years ago, I was in that building right there in Moore Square, and everybody was out here doing the same thing for me. And it had it not been for the voice of my community, I wouldn't even be here. This stuff is serious. When I see this, I walked up and I saw everybody out here. I got goosebumps, man. I started wanting to cry, man. It's people right now that desperately needs help, man. It's been victims out here, been victimized by the same system. It's been placed for the same. Everybody who didn't say anything and speak up when this man was doing what he's doing is just as guilty. Everybody who sit back and watched it, they just as guilty. They're not innocent. They're all guilty. Everybody who was aware of it, everybody who had word of it, everybody who had knowledge of it, they are all just as guilty. Don't ever let that slip up. We got to pay attention to what's in front of us and what's going on and what's happening. This community has been struck. For everybody who's been victimized by this person in this community, I sincerely apologize. I'm sorry. I watched that stuff with my mother. I watched her go through that stuff. It's a horrible thing to watch. I didn't know. I didn't understand it. And I see this, and I'm disgusted by it. I'm here on the behalf of all you victims and all the victims' family and everybody who didn't get justice and feel like you didn't get justice. This is what it looked like. I'm inspired. Man, I love you people, man. Keep pushing the pedal. Keep moving it, man. Justice for Kansas City, Kansas. Let it be known, man. I'm sorry. Be peaceful, y'all.
Give it up one more time for Lamont McIntyre. I hope at some point this message, this group does reach those inside who are wrongfully incarcerated. Don't ever lose hope. Don't ever lose hope. One day we hope that you too will be like our brother Lamont McIntyre, and you will be outside and free to be with your family, to be in the spaces that you want. So do not give up hope. When I think about the victims of Golubski, especially the women, we got to remember those in our communities that get up every day and do the hard work to serve sexual assault survivors. That's not easy work. People who take the trauma of others and try to help people to heal. And it is with great pleasure and honor that I introduce to you Olive Webb, who is the crisis line specialist at MOCSA, the Metropolitan Organization to Counter Sexual Assault, where she provides direct services to survivors of sexual violence through the crisis line and in-person advocacy. These are some of the unsung heroes in our community, so give it up one more time for Olive.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So as she said, my name's Olivia Webb. I'm the Crisis Line Specialist at MOXA, which is the Metropolitan Organization to Counter Sexual Assault. We are a local rape crisis agency here in Kansas City. First, I'd just like to say I'm really grateful to see so many faces here. I was born and raised in KCK, so it's just nice to see the community get together for this cause. I'd like to briefly introduce my coworker here with me. This is Brianna. She's been an advocate at MOXA for over a year, and she's an aspiring human rights lawyer. We are here today because at MOXA, our mission is to improve the lives of survivors of sexual violence and to prevent sexual violence within our communities. Brianna and I will be set up at a table right over there on the other side of the Christmas tree to provide emotional support and also to provide anybody with resources who may be impacted by anything that's we kind of talk about today. MOXA offers a variety of resources to anyone who is a survivor in the metro area. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter how you identify yourself. It doesn't matter if something happened to you yesterday or 20 years ago. MOXA is here for you. Our services include sexual abuse education and prevention programs for school, community, professional, and service industry settings. We also have counseling services that are for survivors and their significant others, and advocacy, which is my personal favorite because we work for the advocacy department. The advocacy department runs our 24-hour crisis line where we provide support over the phone or also in person, whether that be at a hospital or at a law enforcement agency. The way I typically describe the advocacy department to people is anything that someone now might be dealing with because of what happened to them, MOXA can try to help. Examples of things that we try to help with range from helping someone file for order of protection, filing for a crime victim's compensation, support during a detective interview, or maybe someone needs to break an apartment lease after assault has happened to them. Whatever the case may be, MOXA is here to help. One thing I've yet to mention is that all of our services are free of cost. We never need to see insurance, a credit card, anything of that nature. People who have experienced violence should not have to pay a cent in order to receive the help that they need. And at MOXA, we stand by that. If you are interested in learning more, if you are needing support today, or if you may just want some brochures and stickers, feel free to find us over there at our table. Thank you.
All right, y'all. Part of this work is just as much about the soul as it is about everything else. And with that, I'm very excited to speak to our soul, the local poet and performer, very talented Wyandotte Payne.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wyandotte Payne. I am a spoken word artist and activist from Kansas City, Missouri. I'm here today to let y'all know that despite what it may look like, Kansas City, Missouri does have love for Kansas City, Kansas. And your fight is our fight. I'm gonna share a poem with y'all and then I'll get out your hair. In America, they want us to believe that all lives matter. And they do, unless you are poor, or sick, or displaced, or until they don't, or rather you're too dark, which is to say too African, to claim pure-blooded American ancestry, then in that case, here in America we say Black lives matter, unless you're gay, or trans, or a woman. In that case, in America, you can be mother, martyr, marauded, murdered, missing, still milk carton missing, but they will not miss you. They will not mourn you. They will not march or make murals in your name, will not even mention you or your name like men in America. In this place, they will treat your vagina like a black hole, hungry for hands and your humanity, suitable only for sucking your memory into a forgettable oblivion. In America, they will not media frenzy for you, will not release multiple amber alerts for those who are amber-hued, will consider online-only activism enough for you. They will not cover your casket with concern or consternation, will not hashtag at your grave, will not give a damn that there are worse fates for you than the grave. Here in America, we will say to the world, bring back our girls, as if there were not so many of our girls here in this place that were already lost. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for our sister and beyond. We as national leaders have had the incredible honor to meet so many incredible local leaders, both from the Kansas City, Kansas side and the Kansas City, Missouri side. And I'm going to echo that the folks from Kansas City, Missouri got your back a whole 100%. And one of those brothers that I'm going to introduce to you, an incredible organizer who was part of the team that helped to make this happen, is our dear brother Ricky Kidd, who's also someone who has survived 23 years of wrongful incarceration. He is an author, a public speaker, a justice advocate, and just someone with such a beautiful, positive spirit even after all that he endured. So please give it up for Ricky Kidd.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's make some noise real quick for justice. As a directly impacted individual who was falsely incarcerated for 23 years, trapped underneath the rubble of a failed criminal legal system, I know all too well the devastation and hurt that has plagued this community when it comes to wrongful convictions. Through my own journey to freedom and justice, I realized that we must summon our spirit of resilience, as well as our willingness to become defiant, to stand up against oppression, and to pull against the chains designed to keep us bound until they break. At the age of 21, when the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department arrested me for 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of armed criminal actions, I recall them expressing that I had the right to remain silent, to hush myself. And although I understand that it was a part of my Miranda rights, I can't help but wonder if it was also code for be quiet and don't say anything towards the harm that we caused you and your community. But I say to you, although we have the right to remain silent, we also have the freedom to speak loudly, to speak boldly, and to speak collectively. And so I say to you, community of KCK, that we see you, that we hear you, and that we stand together with you. And we also say to the Department of Justice and to the unified government of Wyandotte County that we insist on a pattern practice investigation so that corruption can be ended in this community, and so that the healing can begin for the beautiful souls that live inside this community. As we share this space together, and as we part on this cold day, might we all remember that the voice of one can be ignored, but not the voices of many. Haki sasa, justice now.
Thank you, Ricky. Up next, our next speaker is a very dear friend, a board member of More Squared, which is a social justice, religious-based organization here in Kansas City. Edgar Palacio, who is also the executive director and founder of the Latinx Education Collaborative. Ramon, let go.
Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes. As Trisha said, my name is Edgar Palacios, founder of the Latinx Education Collaborative and of an organization called Revolución Educativa, where we work on educational equity. And I'm also a proud board member of More Squared. One more shout out for More Squared. The Metro Organization for Racial and Economic Equity. I want to give a brief history of our involvement as More Squared. In 2018, on the heels of a black woman cadet filing a lawsuit against the unified government, alleging that she was raped by an academy instructor, Chief Terry Ziegler fired her for reporting the rapes. More Squared made these demands. Fire Chief Ziegler, and he retired on the heels of these public demands. Indict Golubski, in this year that has happened. Create a hotline for citizens to report abuse, and the DA established one with the Conviction Integrity Unit, and we demanded an outside investigation of KCKPD. That demand escalated when we joined with Midwest Innocence Project, the National Innocence Project, and Team Rock, formally requesting a Department of Justice pattern and practice investigation. It is the only demand yet to be fulfilled from these early demands. We need the Department of Justice more than ever. To know that these things have happened, and to know that there has been no formal investigation conducted, no formal reconciliation with the community, no changes in the patterns and the practices that allowed for these atrocities, that is shameful. But we will not give up until someone intervenes with the system. Over the past 5 years, More Squared has knocked on thousands of doors, called thousands of neighbors, and delivered thousands of postcards in Wyandotte County. We have hundreds of members who live in Wyandotte County, and we are firmly rooted here. We are not going anywhere. We believe that this investigation will happen, and we will still be here when it does. I know that we have some canvassers out there collecting some petitions. Can you please raise your hands? All right. Make sure to sign that petition, please, so we can demand justice for KCK, because without justice, there will be. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Edgar and More Squared. More Squared, this also would not have happened without their incredible work and support. I'd like to introduce to you our next speaker. She's my sister. I've been organizing with her for over a decade. She's a national leader and the current executive director and co-president of the Gathering for Justice, which is an organization founded by the legendary Harry Belafonte. Carmen Perez Jordan has been working in the areas of criminal justice and racial justice for her entire adult life, and we are so happy that she is here with us today. So give it up for Carmen Perez Jordan.
Good afternoon. My name is Carmen Perez Jordan, and I am the proud president and CEO of the Gathering for Justice. First of all, I want to extend my gratitude and recognize Team Rock, who brought this appalling crime to light and filed a petition seeking records from the Kansas City Police Department to unearth a history of officer misconduct. I too want to acknowledge all of the victims, as well as Lamont McIntyre, who was here earlier speaking, and his mother Rosie, who alleged in a lawsuit that former police detective Roger Golubski framed Lamont for a double homicide in 1994. We stand in solidarity with you, brother. Today, we local and national organizers faith leaders and survivors have come together in solidarity to let the world know what happened here in Kansas City, Kansas. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated incident. This type of behavior happens everywhere. We're all connected. The same systems that prey on black and brown women in the Bronx prey on black and brown women in the borders of El Paso, prey on black and brown women right here in Kansas City. As a Chicana feminist and a leader of an organization that fights to hold police accountable and advocates for criminal justice reform, I am outraged that former police detective Roger Golubski was allowed to prey on dozens of black and Latina women with impunity over decades, protected by his fellow officers, his superiors, and this unjust system. This man and the atrocity of his actions, often targeting vulnerable teenagers and mothers, must be held accountable. This arrest is only the first step in repairing the 3 decades of harm to this community. Civil rights groups have repeatedly asked for investigations into the department, which protected and shielded these crimes. Woo, it's chilly out here, huh? I'm really trying to go as fast as I can, everybody. For decades, the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department has neglected to hold any officers accountable or have any transparency around issues of corruption or misconduct. All accusations have gone uninvestigated. After years of demanding records from the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department, the victims have been stonewalled. The department has failed to protect and serve. It has failed the many victims of Roger Golubski, and it has failed in its core mission of public safety. And these are the same police officers that will tell you that those of us that are here today from across the country do not belong here, that we are making trouble and spreading lies. But I am here to tell you that as advocates and civil rights leaders, it is our right to demand justice. We believe the only option left is for the United States Justice Department to open a pattern or practice investigation like the one they opened into Louisville Metro Police Department, which led to the recent indictments of several officers in the killing of Breonna Taylor. And so I'm here standing in solidarity with Kansas City. I am here standing in solidarity with Louisville. I am here standing in solidarity with the Bronx and Oklahoma City. I am standing here with all of you to fight against the brutality and oppression of our people and stand up for transparency and accountability. We're all that we have, remember, but we're all that we need. Thank you.
Well, let's keep that energy up for our next speaker, the Reverend Dr. Nakia Smith Robert. She is the founder of Abolitionist Sanctuary, a nonprofit organization and faith-based abolitionist movement. Welcome, Reverend.
What's up, Kansas City? When I say Kansas, you say city. Kansas, Kansas. When I say city, you say strong. City, city. Yeah. And that's exactly what you are. Strong. Strong against the injustices. Strong against excessive force and corrupt police. Strong against the inequities. You're strong. And so I'm standing here today to affirm you and to stand with you in solidarity. I'm from Harlem, New York. And it wasn't too long ago where I stood to rep my city. And 5 young men who were wrongfully convicted. The Central Park 5, now the exonerated 5. I live next door to them, and so I know what it feels like when these injustices ravage our community. I know what it feels like when society always wants to see us as guilty bodies. I know what it feels like when black women are always perceived as deviant. I know what it feels like when we are seen as unworthy of injustice. I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like not to be believed. But I encourage you to believe the people who are closest to the injustices. Believe the people who are the most vulnerable. Believe the people who are the least of these. And most importantly, believe the black women. I grew up to a single poor black mother. And I know as a mother myself, there isn't anything that we wouldn't do for our children. And this man took advantage of the loyalty of a black woman to her family. A black mother who would go to any length, even if it means breaking the law, even if it means conceding to indignities to protect the safety of their family. This is the beast. He is the monster. And we have to cut that injustices right where it is, and it cannot perpetuate any longer. Now is the time. Enough is enough. We won't be quiet anymore. You will hear us roar. You will hear us rise. You will hear us stand up and say, no justice, no justice, no peace. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Dr. Nakia Roberts. Listen, folks, it's cold out here. And I want to remind you that any time that there has been justice, it hasn't been because everybody got up or because everybody spoke. It's because of a determined few. And you decided today to be here. I want you to think about that you decided to be here. Others decided not to be here, but you decided to be here. We are in gratitude to all of you, and I hope that very soon we will all get to witness justice together. At the end of this program, it's Thanksgiving next week. And it's a time for families and folks to be together. So we're gonna have some grocery bags of non-perishable items, and even if you don't need it, take it for somebody that needs it. And we got plenty for everybody and then some. Next up, I want to introduce to you a dear brother. Someone who also has seen injustice himself. Wrongfully incarcerated for close to 8 years in New York City. He's one of the most incredible hip-hop artists that this country has ever seen, at least in my opinion. He's also an activist and an organizer, and he is the founder of the Boycott Black Murder campaign. If you are wondering what this was, Black Murder. When you hear oftentimes folks who are unequivocally pro-police will say, why don't you worry about the violence that's happening in black and brown communities? And we want to be unequivocally clear that, yes, we want to cease gun violence in our communities. We work to end gun violence in our communities, to support violence interrupters, and we also want to hold police departments accountable. So guess what? It's not either or, it is and for us. So give it up, Kansas City, Kansas, to my son, the General Lennon.
It's not a good afternoon for me, y'all. I live in New York City and I shouldn't have to be here. I shouldn't have to come across this nation and demand justice for black women. But Dr. Martin Luther King said injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So that means if black women are being sexually assaulted in Kansas City, people of good moral standards should be standing up everywhere in this nation. So Malcolm X also said that the black woman is the most disrespected and neglected woman in this world. But that stops today. I declare and decree that as a black man, I will stand up every time a black woman is violated, anywhere in this nation. As I listened to Miss Ophelia speak, it brought tears to my eyes as I stood next to her, knowing that there was no one there to protect her. There was no one there to protect her children. And as black men, we all should feel like we are failing our women if they don't feel protected. When these men can do anything they want all around this country to black women and they are not protected, us as black men should take it personal. And I am taking it personal. Justice delayed is justice denied. Who arrests the people who are supposed to protect us when they violate us? Who's going to protect us from the police when they are sexually violating black women across this nation? I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I should not have to come out my home to demand justice for basic human rights. But I understand that we don't have the right to do nothing. I want y'all to say, I don't have the right to do nothing. I don't have the right to do nothing. I sat and talked with a legend and I eagerly listened. He told me how he marched with Dr. King because he believed in his mission. He invested his money and his time to change our people's conditions, and all I could think as I heard this man speak with conviction is, I don't have the right to do nothing. You see, Harry Belafonte sacrificed for people like me. So if he decided to do nothing, then where would I be? You see, if he was just content with his celebrity status, it wouldn't be an Until Freedom or Black Lives Matter. So I don't have the right to do nothing because we stand on the shoulders of our elders. We got to continue their fight against this system that failed us. Mr. B tells us, he drills in my mind, you got to carry this torch. You see, this is your time. Injustice is a crime, but it's about execution. Those directly impacted must be the solution. So I don't have the right to do nothing. You see, revolution is a part of evolution. And our forefathers weren't given no restitution. They were given destitution and treatment that's inhumane. So if we ain't part of the solution, how the hell we gonna complain? So I don't have the right to do nothing. I'm on a mission. I'm screaming until they listen. Dr. King died for freedom. I'm carrying on tradition. My people want justice. I'm carrying that petition. Police is out here killing us. We're gonna need some more convictions. Peaceful and passive are not the same thing. Know the difference. We are not supposed to lay down and die with no resistance, so I don't have the right to do nothing. I don't have the right not to fight for my life. It's a gift from God, so with all of my might, I will protect my freedom, my family, my home. I know y'all gonna fight with me. Y'all ain't gonna leave me alone. So when my feet get weary and I can no longer run, I think about these babies that died by the gun and say, I don't have the right to do nothing. God bless y'all.
So it takes belief, the belief of the folks who tell us what's happening and standing with them. Today we are here to tell Wyandotte County we are with you, and we are honoring the brave folks who have spoken up. But next up, I want to introduce some of the first folks who said, we believe you. I want to introduce my colleagues Cheryl Pilot and Lindsay Reynolds, who are civil rights attorneys, who represented Lamont McIntyre in his case, who were some of the first people who, when told the atrocities that happened, said, we believe you. And what can we do? How can we lend our voice to make a change? So these two change makers believe in the power of community and are continuing to do everything they can to bring accountability here to Kansas City, Kansas. Ladies?
Oh, hello. Thank you all for hanging in there because it is getting cold. I also want to say thank you to all of you. Can you hear us okay? We know more than a few of you. We've been in your phones, in your inboxes, in your text messages for years. Hello. And thank you for letting us into your hearts and into your stories, and it's really helped make today possible. I have a few specific things, we both have a few specific things we want to say, and I want to tell you why I'm feeling a very strong sense we need to set something straight. because some of the comments that have been coming out of the unified government are that Roger Golubski is ancient history. Who needs to talk about that anymore? That's in the past. It was over years ago. It was a one-off, just a few mistakes. Let's forget about it. Nothing could be less true. Roger Golubski was enabled by a system, and so we're going to talk about that system because that system is still intact. Roger Golubski did not exist in a vacuum. He was part of the system, a system that was supposed to protect citizens from abuse, but did not.
His colleagues knew what he was doing, but they did nothing.
His supervisors knew what he was doing, but they did nothing.
Sworn officers and supervisors saw his exploitation of the vulnerable and turned a blind eye.
They protected Golubski, not the community, not those they were sworn to serve.
They enabled his wrongdoing, some even joining in his awful deeds.
They saw themselves as entitled, and Golubski was the example they followed.
They saw that Golubski was promoted, not punished.
He was rewarded, not sanctioned.
And the department said his record is clean.
Golubski became a powerful detective. He was even promoted to captain.
He investigated the most serious of cases. But these investigations were corrupted by the use of so-called informants.
A former police chief testified in a case we were involved in. He testified, well, we knew he had an informant network, and then here is the clincher. We knew he liked black women, young black women.
One supervisor was troubled. He heard his subordinates joking about Golubski's, quote, appetite, end quote, for sexual activity with black women.
This supervisor, this brave supervisor, complained up the chain of command. He was unique. He complained to his supervisors, but to his knowledge, nothing was done.
A counselor at a domestic violence shelter had contact with Golubski's victims. She tried to report it. Not once, twice. No one called her back.
The damage inflicted by Golubski and his colleagues continues. It is not limited to the past. The consequences are very much with us and with this community.
Many of those wrongfully convicted during Golubski's tenure remain in prison.
There are women who are still suffering with trauma and emotional pain.
There are families who lost loved ones and watched as the police department did little to no investigation, leaving the assailants free.
And when Golubski would tell the loved ones of the persons who had been murdered that he was working on the case, he would tell them he was working on the case, but then they would just see him cruising the streets looking for more black women to victimize. And the system ground on. And the system that produced a Roger Golubski is also responsible for other harms. It's not just Golubski. There are others who need to be called to account. That is our next task. Be with us, folks.
Be with us. It is our pleasure to introduce two of our friends, Star Cooper and Michelle Hooks.
We've known Star and Michelle for a while. They are directly impacted individuals, and the most striking thing about both of them, from the moment we met them, they both came forward, of course, looking to address their own situations, but even more than that, they both said, I want to help other people who've been through this. And when you are dealing with something as painful as what they have been dealing with, that is an incredibly generous thing to say. And they have both made themselves available to lawyers, to people, activists, anyone working on this. They are here to help all of us. So please give a warm welcome to Star Cooper and Michelle Hawks.
KCK! Hey. I am the lead organizer for We the Voice. I'm Star Cooper. My mother was involved over here. She was killed when I was 1 year old. And what Golubski did do was take my mother away from me, but one thing he didn't know, that she birthed a fighter. And I will not stop fighting until each one of us get the answers, get the justice, and the peace that we need from what this Kansas City, Kansas police officer did to our families. Not only that, he's not the only one that needs to be investigated. Everybody connected to this needs to be investigated. Everybody, even the medical examiner, some of these funeral homes, everybody that was connected to Roger Golubski needs to be behind the bars, and they need to suffer like most of these families suffered. And I will not stop fighting until each one of them is convicted on what they did to each one of our families.
Hi, everyone.
You got it. You got it. Come on, you got it.
I am a victim of Roger Golubski. When I grew up, the police used to come to the schools, and we used to call them officer friendly. They used to bring us coloring books. They used to do everything with us. And then in an instant, he changed how I feel and how I always feel about the police. That ain't right. Because they took a job to protect and serve, not harm. And that's all that he has brought to this community is harm and disgrace. And until they change the way they look at black women, black men, Mexican people in general, we will not sit down until everyone is out that penitentiary that do not deserve to be in there. And as we say, no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
Give it up again for Star and Michelle, please. When Star was talking about trying to help all of the other families, for some perspective, we have identified over 30 black women who were murdered and whose deaths were never investigated, who had some sort of connection with Roger Golubski or other officers. It ain't right. And we also know when the problems are this big, it takes every single one of us to fix it. It's going to take every single one of us to dismantle this system and build a better one. And that's why I'm honored today to introduce our next speaker, who came up all the way from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm honored to introduce Reverend T. Sharia Moore Dickerson, where she works with the Terrence Crutcher Foundation, which was established in honor of Terrence Crutcher, who was killed by police in 2016. And Reverend Shree also serves as the director of Black Lives Matter in Oklahoma City.
Where you at, Oklahoma? Kansas City, Kansas, we want you to know that we stand with you. We will continue to stand with you, and I hope for the few minutes that I share with you today, we come to bring you hope. I want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to extend support and encouragement from your neighbors, your allies, and your accomplices in Oklahoma. As we stand in collective power, supporting these brave women, survivors, and justice-seeking citizens of Kansas City by demanding justice and supporting the activists, organizers, and advocates that are doing the work day in, day out, boots on the ground, we want to remind you that it is very possible. It is very possible to convict predators, including law enforcement officers, and the crimes that they perpetrate, and the state-sanctioned violence that they spew in our communities. Black women have constantly been ignored. Black and brown lives brutalized and stolen. Poor folks, queer folks, consistently marginalized, undervalued, and considered disposable in this society. And I remind you, all of this is happening on stolen land. The undercurrent of invisibility allowed a predator with a badge to sexually assault black women in Oklahoma City between December 2013 until June of 2014. His predatory, sexually violent behavior was escalating as he took greater risk, one after the other. The absence of accountability, integrity, and humanity allows for jaded consciences to saturate spaces and continue stealing lives without remorse. This must stop everywhere. Daniel Holtzclaw made a mistake. He made a mistake with each person, but his last victim, Janie Liggins, she was the one that spoke up first, and she inspired others. To those that we now refer to as Sheroes, the OKC 13+. With their actions, with their courage, with their tenacity, Daniel Holtzclaw in Oklahoma City 7 years ago today, as we stood demanding justice, was convicted, and his sentence was 263 years, where he still stands inside the Oklahoma prison industrial complex system. The east side of Oklahoma City is historically and presently considered predominantly black. Income levels vary, so the targeting of the poorest and those that are most marginalized is always intentional and methodical. He didn't believe anyone would believe them, but we did. We want to say to our sisters and the citizens of Kansas City, Kansas, we believe you. Do you believe our sisters? Do you believe those that speak for justice? I tell you that we will fight to protect black women at all cost. Because when black women rise, humanity is elevated. We love our mothers. We love our sisters. We love our daughters. We love our friends. We love those that stand with us. So make no mistake, we will continue to scream, fight, stomp, yell, and raise our voices and stand in solidarity until justice is given to our sisters in Kansas City, Kansas, and all of those that deal with the tyranny of state-sanctioned violence across this nation. We want you to know that a life conviction is possible. This fight is not in vain. Continue to press forward, looking out for the person on your left and on your right. Continue supporting your local activists who are on the ground. Make sure that you're also supporting them financially, because the revolution has never been free. Continue to receive assistance and support from national organizers that have extended reach. Most importantly, let the survivors know that we believe you, that we will fight for you, and even on the days that you can't, we will. Take care of yourselves with love and power. I leave you, as Oklahoma says, we believe you. We are with you. And let justice reign. I stand proxy for my sister, Dr. Tiffany Crutcher, also, who is the executive director and founder of the Terrence Crutcher Foundation. I am very privileged to stand by Terrence Crutcher Jr. Also mention that Reverend Joey Crutcher, the father of this amazing legacies, is in the presence with us. And I also stand with Grace Franklin of OKC Artists for Justice, who led the successful campaign against Daniel Holclaw with the OKC 13. Let justice reign. Ashe.
That's right. Justice! Now! No peace! 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 That's always my favorite guy at every rally, because I need you to keep us warm. Everybody's like, how do I keep talking up here? I'm hot-blooded. My blood's boiling inside, so that's why I'm not cold. I want to give 2 shout-outs to folks who are here with us, and I just learned a fact today that I didn't know before. We are joined here today by our pastor from New York City, actually, to be more clear, Brooklyn, New York, Dr. Adolphus Lacey, who I come to find out is from Kansas City. So give it up for Dr. and Reverend Adolphus Lacey, who's here with us from Brooklyn, New York, but he's actually also a part of your community. And I want to say a shout out to a woman here who thinks that she's behind the scenes and does all the behind the scenes things, and I always appreciate her for doing that, but she deserves a shout out. Give it up for Danya Diaz from Team Rock. She's doing that New York thing where it's like, girl, don't be doing that. We almost towards the finish line because we left some very powerful people, and you are all in for a treat. You know, not only do we need our faith leaders and those influencers on the front lines, we also want our influencers and those who are artists and people with platforms to come out to the community and say, we too believe you, we too stand with you. And there is a sister, she is a lyricist, she is a lyrical master of our generation, who anytime we pick up the phone and call her and say there is an injustice, she asks us, where is it and when is it, and I will be there. So it is my honor to introduce to you none other than Rhapsody, a multi-Grammy nominated Jamland Rock Nation recording artist with some of the best bars in the rap game. She's an activist, and she is always outside for our people. Give it up for Rhapsody.
How y'all doing today? It's cold, but it's nowhere near cold as it has been and what's been done to y'all, so I'm happy to be here. I'm here today to stand in solidarity with and show love to this community, especially to the black children and women of Kansas City, Kansas, who have been most harmed by the KCKPD. You should know that from Tulsa to North Carolina, excuse me, yeah, my phone's stuck. From Tulsa to North Carolina, you know, we here to support you. I was utterly disgusted and outraged at the stories that I've heard, and to know that they've been going on for 30 plus years and that a lot of families have not received justice. So I'm happy to be here to support you. In the words of one of the most legendary artists of our time, Bob Marley, he says, if you're the big, big tree, then we are the small, small axes here to cut you down. So I'd like to say that, again, I'm here to stand with you, to be a voice for you, to use my platform to tell your story, to amplify your voices so you receive justice. And I will be one of the small axes here to help cut that big tree of corruption and misconduct down. I love you. Thank you for having me. And no justice? Thank you.
All right, y'all. Next up, I want you to show some love for Miss Ellen Betts from here in Kansas City, Kansas. For over 25 years, Miss Betts has been fighting for justice for her son, Brian Betts, and her nephew, Celester McKinney, who were wrongfully convicted of crimes they did not commit.
Good afternoon. To God be the glory. To God be the glory. My name is Ellen Betts. My son Brian Betts and Celester McKinney, my nephew, were wrongfully accused, put on trial and convicted of first-degree murder in 1998. The prosecutor, Dan Cahill, along with Detective Golubski and other KCK detectives, coerced and intimidated witnesses for a conviction. Golubski was directly related to the victim and knowingly told the victim's family about evidence involving the case. He preyed on this community for over 30 years and used this power that he had as a detective to destroy families and communities. I am here representing my son Brian Betts and my nephew Celester McKinney, along with the Wyandotte County community. The recent evidentiary hearing on October 24th and 25th revealed the continuous corruption of the KCK Police Department and the DA's office. There is a quote that says, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. We are here. We are the good people. Mark Dupree, the DA, stated in his testimony that a case must not just raise an eyebrow, it must have facts. Brian Betts, my son, is represented by attorney Kevin Shepard in Topeka. Sarah Swain, attorney for Celester McKinney in Lawrence, Kansas. The burden of proof is on the two attorneys to present the facts. They have presented evidence, they have presented facts, they have presented the truth. And myself and others, we thank God for these two attorneys that are fighting and show courage and are being brave for representing Brian and Celester. Mark Dupree stated in his testimony that a case must not just raise an eyebrow, it must have facts. Sarah Swain and Kevin Shepard, the attorneys, they raised the facts, they produced evidence, along with the truth. We have people here today that can tell you about this case. It has not just raised their eyebrow. They have produced evidence, they have produced facts, and they have produced the truth. So that's what these two attorneys that have represented Brian Betts and Celester McKinney have done. Here's a fact. Since Mark Dupree is stating that a case must do more than just raise an eyebrow, how about bad Detective Golubski abusing his power of authority by exploiting young black girls and women, showing his hatred of people in the black community in Wyandotte County, by raping young girls, murdering young girls and women. I want to give thanks right now to the federal indictments and the people that have shown their expertise in bringing down this bad detective and all his foul corruptness. And what about the people that have helped him? They need to be brought accountable for all their wrongdoing. And we're asking Judge Sumby to be one of these good men that will fight against evil and evil principalities. Be a just judge and grant Brian Betts, my son, and my nephew, Sylvester McKinney, my nephew, a new trial based on the evidence and based on facts. As Henry Wadsworth Longfellow quoted, the wheels of justice grind slowly, but we got the hope, we got the faith. God is there. We're talking about the wheels of justice of God in this fight. This fight is not just ours, it's of God, and he's made all these revelations come through, all these wrongdoings of these bad KCKPD and the monster that Roger Golubski is. So again, I thank God for the attorneys, Sarah Swain and Kevin Shepard, helping Brian Betts and Sylvester McKinney. And we just here to speak out on all the wrongdoing. All the wrongdoings of the KCKPD throughout the years. This battle is not ours, it's God. And thank God for the working through these attorneys, working through all the federal investigations and the federal personnel that are showing the courageous efforts to bring down these bad, corrupt policemen here in KCK and bring down and put Roger Golubski where he belongs, in jail for the rest of his life. Thank God. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Miss Ellen. I know it's getting cold and it's getting late, but let's give her a little more energy, a little more thank you for Miss Ellen. All right. Next up, we have another amazing Kansas City advocate, Justice Gadsden. Miss Justice wears many hats in the community. She is the co-vice president of the Midwest Region for National Lawyers Guild and the founder and director of Real Justice Network, a Black and Indigenous survivor-led reproductive justice organization.
Thank you, Tricia. Disrespected, unprotected, and neglected. Decades after Malcolm's words, they still ring true, as evidenced by this police department's actions as well as their inaction. Marginalized genders have been the recipients of cruelty and extreme abuse at the hands of those in power. To Black and Indigenous, people of color, to marginalized genders, to my sisters, to my aunties, cousins, mamas, grandmothers, we have lived our lives under the veil, under the cloak of secrecy, always having been subject to the whims of white boys in this country. We've been fighting off prying hands all our lives in varying degrees. From the moment the physical bodies of our foreparents were stolen and brought to this land, we had to fight. We had to fight the slavers and their friends. We had to fight the medical exploitation of our bodies. We had to fight, all the while being extremely marginalized, dealing with racism and systemic oppression, and carrying the weight of this world on our shoulders, literally still saving the lives of every damn body. Come on, y'all. As a leader in the reproductive justice space, I'm here to tell you that the sexual exploitation and trauma that happened to Rosie, Star's mama, and our other siblings in Kansas is a reproductive justice issue. And the criminalization of Rosie's children is most definitely a reproductive justice issue. You see, reproductive justice isn't just about having a choice or some access to care that we need. It's also about being able to birth children and raise them in a safe environment, free from harm, free from societal neglect and reckless abandonment, and free from predators like Roger Golubski. We're ready for a change. Not just here in Kansas, but all across the country. Because see, in Kansas City, Missouri, just across the river, they don't listen to us. We had a woman they found in Excelsior Springs. People reporting, we got somebody taking black women off the street, and they don't listen to us. So today we fight back. Today we say no more. Your reign of terror over the black community is over. Today we stand tall in the face of all the lies to discredit black women, mages, my trans women, all the lies to convince you and even us that we aren't worthy of love, of care, and protection. I want all of our survivors to know we believe you. We trust you. We love you. And my goodness, we got you. So today, we taking our power. We denounce anything that stands in the way of our healing. And yes, we're going to fight like hell to make Golubski and all of them regret the day they even had a thought to harm any of us. And what I want to leave you with is that black women, black mages, we deserve your support. We deserve your love. And damn it, we deserve your protection. Thank you.
If there was ever anyone who had a perfect name, give it up one more time for justice. We're almost there, folks, I promise you. I want you to give it up to my two other fellow co-founders of Until Freedom, Angelo Pinto Esquire, who's an organizer and a movement lawyer and currently activist in residence at Yale University. And of course, she needs no introduction, our dear sister, Tamika D. Mallory, author of State of Emergency, and one of the best organizers and civil rights leaders of our generation. Give it up one more time for Angelo Pinto Esquire and Tamika D. Mallory.
Right. No justice! No justice! No justice! No justice! And if there ain't gonna be no justice, there ain't gonna be no damn peace. I want to thank all of you for braving this chilly weather to be here today, because a people who will come out in the cold to fight for justice are determined people who will not back down. We didn't come all the way from New York City for the folks who are unwilling to stand up in this city for themselves. We came to stand with you. We came to uplift you. We came to let you know that people all over this nation believe that the folks in Kansas City, Kansas deserve justice. Do you believe that the people of Kansas City, Kansas deserve justice? At Until Freedom, we believe that love is light and that light is love. And we believe in shining light in dark places. What has been happening in Kansas City, Kansas is darkness. And we showed up from all over this nation to bring the light. Whenever there is a community going through what you all have endured, it is our obligation to uplift your voices and to ensure that the entire nation is uncomfortable until justice is done.
But justice is not just a few officers committing heinous crimes. Justice is an entire damn police department knowing about it and not doing anything to stop it. Justice is not just a few women being harmed, but it's trumped up charges on their family members and their leadership in this city doing nothing about it. We came not just because we want a few officers indicted. We are appreciative that the Department of Justice has said Kansas City, Kansas is a top priority. And they, of course, we know, issued those indictments and are making sure that the charges of sex trafficking has been added, and that is a good thing. But what we want from the Department of Justice is a little bit more. If it is their top priority, and we appreciate them for doing this work, we know what the Department of Justice of this administration has been doing across this nation. And so we believe, brother, we believe. But we want the entire police department looked at from the top to the bottom, and anyone who knew about it, anyone who is involved, they need to be tried the same way that they try brothers and sisters that look like us every single day. How dare you be a department that is supposed to stand and call itself law enforcement, and yet you don't know the law yourself? How dare they be a mayor in a city and city council members who sit in these buildings and do nothing to protect the people who pay the taxes that pay your salary? We believe that more will be done, and we will continue to come here to this city until it happens. Now, I read this quote. It's cold, so I got to get it open. Y'all got to give me a second. Thank you very much. The quote says, "Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light." And I already told you that light is love. So don't let them make you feel like you should be quiet. You love this city so much that you would challenge it and put forth its darkness so that there can be light for our children and for generations to come. If we don't stop it in Kansas City, it will happen all over this nation, and we are here to raise the voices of Breonna Taylor, of George Floyd, and so many others who have been taken out by a racist system that continues to kill and harm our people. No justice, brothers and sisters. Don't back down. Be bold and be the light.
All right, y'all, we're getting to the end of our program today. And finally, to lead us today in benediction, please welcome Reverend Steve Barnes, pastor at Grace Chapel, AME.
Amen. I know it's cold out here, right? Amen, but it's colder in that building sometimes. James chapter 4, verse 17 says, "Those of you who know the good you should do but don't do it is sin for them." So let's go to the Lord in prayer. Almighty and everlasting God, creator of the entire universe. Lord, there's corruption everywhere, not just in this city, but in this country, in this world. Lord, we just ask right now that you allow all of our lights to shine so that the darkness can run like roaches. Lord, we also ask that you empower those victims. We lift them up in prayer, Lord, because they have had their power stolen. So, Lord, we ask that you re-empower them, strengthen them, build domes of protection around them, that nothing can harm them. Not only the victims that have already been victimized, but those in the present and those in the future, because until this is over, there will still be more victims. So, Lord, we just ask that you will correct this mess, fix it right now, bring those to justice that are unjust, and fix these systems of oppression, Lord, because they are people doing wrong when they know they should do good. It is sin for them. Lord, we thank you in advance for already answering these prayers, knowing that it is done, it is done, it is done. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ, Ashe. Ashe.
Give it up for Reverend Barnes, folks. All right. You all have been troopers. Like Sister Tamika said, we will be back and back and back until we see for ourselves that everyone who has been involved in the harm and terrorization of the Kansas City community by the KCK Police Department is brought to justice. And these rallies happen, or these events happen, because there are people who sit on Zooms and go in meetings and do the work behind the scenes, and we want to make sure that we thank them all. So we want to give it up to Team Rock, who helped put this all together, the United Justice Coalition, the Midwest Innocence Project, More Squared, Morgan Pilati LLC, the Real Justice Network, the ACLU Kansas, the Metropolitan Organization to Counter Sexual Assault, Faith for Black Lives, the Gathering for Justice, the Terrence Crutcher Foundation, the Abolitionist Sanctuary, the Ad Hoc Group Against Crime, Woke Vote, We the Voice, Vocatios, the Spiritual Sisters Circle, Cultivating Love LLC, KC Community Bail Fund, and of course, my people at Until Freedom.
And of course, we also want to thank all of you. We want to thank all of you for being here today, but also for keeping to using your voice. Because today is just one day, and we are not done.
That's right. We are not done, folks. So, as I said earlier before, there is a yellow truck behind you, the Penske truck right there. We have some volunteers and folks who are by the truck, and we got plenty. So before you all leave and be safe and go home to those that love you, pass by that truck, take some groceries, even if you don't need them. Take some groceries for a neighbor. Take some groceries for someone in your community that needs it. But please, go over to the Penske truck, and we will see you next time. Until freedom and until justice.